My name is Hannah. I am 31 years old. This is not how I thought life would be. I have been married twice, but still, I have no peace. I grew up in a small town. My parents were simple people. They worked hard every day. My mother cooked, cleaned, and smiled even when she was tired. My father was quiet but kind. I thought love was simple. I thought it meant care, time, and respect. But love is not always like that. I met my first husband, Daniel, when I was 24. He was tall, smart, and charming. He made me laugh. He told me I was special. I felt lucky. All my friends liked him. He came to see me often. He brought snacks and made jokes. My heart was full. After 6 months, he asked me to marry him. I said yes. I didn't wait. I didn't think too much. I thought, this is love. This is my chance. We had a small wedding. My parents were happy. I was happy too. For a while. At first, things were good. He helped around the house. He asked about my day. He kissed my forehead in the morning. I felt safe. But after some time, Daniel changed. He stopped talking to me. He stayed out late. He said he was busy. I waited every night. I made dinner and watched the clock. Sometimes he came home after midnight. Sometimes he didn't come at all. I asked him, "Where were you?" He said, "Don't start again." He looked at his phone and walked away. My hands felt cold. My face felt warm. I didn't know what to say. I went to the kitchen and sat alone. One day, I found his shirt in the bathroom. It had a strange smell, a woman's perfume. I felt something break inside me. I didn't cry. I just sat on the floor. I waited for him to come home. That night, he didn't. The next day, I asked him, "Are you seeing someone else?" He didn't answer. He looked at the wall and said, "You're not fun anymore." My voice shook. "I try my best," I said. "I clean. I cook. I wait for you." He laughed. "That's not enough." That night, I packed a small bag. I left the house. I went to my friend's place. Her name was Natalie. She gave me tea and said, "You can stay here." I cried in her room that night. I cried into her pillow. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know how to start again. For 1 year, I lived alone. I worked at a food shop in the market. I didn't talk much. I smiled when people came in. I worked long hours. I saved money. I didn't want to think about Daniel, but sometimes, in the quiet hours, I remembered his face. Then I met someone new. His name was Scott. He came to the shop to buy eggs. He was soft-spoken. He looked at me and smiled. He came every week. He talked about the weather, the streets, the city. I didn't say much, But he waited. He didn't stop coming. One day, he asked me for coffee. I said yes. My hands felt cold again, but this time I smiled. We talked for hours. He was kind. He asked about my family. He didn't ask about Daniel. I liked that. We started seeing each other more. He picked me up after work. He walked me home. He held the door open. He listened when I spoke. I started to feel warm again. After 8 months, he said, "Let's get married." I felt scared. My heart was not sure, but I said yes. My second wedding was small too. Just a few friends. No music, no big dress. Just 2 people who wanted to try again. At first, it was calm. He cooked with me. He told jokes at dinner. He let me sleep in on Sundays. I felt hope again. I thought, this time, it will be better. But after some time, things changed. Not in the same way, but still. Not good. Scott didn't leave the house much. He didn't go out late. But he also didn't talk much. He worked from home. He sat at the table with his laptop all day. He didn't look at me. He didn't ask about my day. At dinner I said, "How was your work?" He said, "Fine." Then silence. Every day was the same. I started feeling small again. I cleaned, cooked, waited. Again. This time, there was no shouting. There were no fights. But there was no love either. One day I made his favorite food. He looked at it and said, "I ate already." I said, "I thought we would eat together." He said, "You didn't tell me." I felt tears in my eyes, but I didn't cry. I just cleaned the table. The next day I stayed late at work. I walked slowly. I looked at people on the street. They held hands. They laughed. I didn't know how they did that. I went home. The house was dark. Scott was on his laptop. He didn't look up. I said, "I'm home." He said, "Okay." I went to the bedroom. I sat on the bed. I looked at my hands. They were dry from washing. My back hurt. My eyes felt tired. I thought, why does this feel the same again? I loved twice. I married twice. But I still felt alone. Not loud pain, not sharp, just quiet, like a slow rain that never ends. Scott never hurt me. He never lied. But he also never saw me. He looked at the world through a screen. He smiled more at videos than at me. Sometimes I asked, "Do you still love me?" He said, "Of course." But his eyes stayed on the screen. One day, I woke up and looked at the ceiling. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to cook. I didn't want to smile. I just lay there. I thought, is this how life will be now? I had no children. I had no big dreams left. Just silence in the house? Just soft footsteps and cold meals? That evening I asked Scott, "Do you ever feel lonely?" He said, "Not really." I looked at him. He looked at his screen. I looked at my hands again. 2 rings, 2 names, 2 homes, but still no peace. Before I continue my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? Sometimes I wonder if someone out there really understands me. Just knowing you're here gives me strength. The days passed. The house felt colder. Scott stayed in his room more. He said he was working, but I often heard music. I heard voices from his laptop. I never asked questions. I just cleaned and cooked. I started to walk outside more. I went to the small park near our street. I sat on a bench and watched the trees. Old people walked slowly. Children played with balls. I sat alone and watched. One morning, I saw a woman sitting on the same bench. She looked at me and smiled. She said, "You come here often?" I said, "Yes. I like the quiet." She said her name was Rachel. She was kind. She talked a lot. I liked her voice. We sat together a few times a week. She brought tea in a flask. I brought biscuits. We talked about life. She told me about her job at a local school. I didn't tell her much. I just said, "I work at the market." That was enough. One day she asked, "Are you happy?" I didn't know what to say. I looked at the trees. I said, "I don't know." She didn't ask more. She just said, "Sometimes that's the answer." At home, Scott was the same. He didn't get angry, but he didn't laugh either. I cooked his meals. I washed his clothes, but he never said thank you. One evening, I cooked pasta. I put it on the table. I said, "Let's eat together tonight." He said, "I have a call now." I sat at the table alone. I ate slowly. I didn't taste the food. It felt like I was invisible. After dinner, I asked, "Can we talk?" He said, "About what?" I said, "About us." He said, "What do you mean?" I looked down. "We don't talk much," I said. He said, "We're just busy." I said, "But I feel alone." He didn't answer. He looked at his screen again. That night, I didn't sleep well. I turned from one side to the other. My pillow was wet. I wanted to scream, but I stayed quiet. The next day, I met Rachel at the park. She said, "You look tired." I said, "I didn't sleep." She looked at me. "You don't have to tell me," she said, "but you can if you want." So I told her. I told her about Daniel. I told her about Scott. I told her how I felt like a shadow in my own house. She listened. She didn't stop me. She didn't give advice. She just said, That sounds very hard. Her words felt soft. I felt lighter. Weeks passed. The cold air came. Scott didn't notice. He wore his headphones all day. He laughed at shows. He typed fast. But he never asked, "How are you?" One night I came home late. I had helped Rachel at her place. Her tap was broken. She had no family in the city. I stayed to make tea and talk. When I got home, Scott said, "Where were you?" I said, "With a friend." He said, "You could have told me." I said, "You never ask." He looked away. He said, "Okay, do what you want." His words didn't hurt me, but they also didn't mean anything. It felt like we were two people in one house, living two different lives. One Sunday, I cleaned the whole house. I dusted every table. I mopped the floor. I opened the windows. The air felt fresh. I smiled for a second. Then I looked at the clock. It was noon. Scott was still in bed. I walked to the bedroom. I said, "It's a nice day. Do you want to go out?" He said, "No, I'm tired." I said, "We never go anywhere." He said, "I don't need to." I stood there for a moment. Then I walked away. I went to the park again. I saw Rachel. We sat under a tree. I said, "I think I made a mistake." She looked at me and said, "Which one?" I said, "The second marriage." She said, "I can't tell you what to do, but you deserve more than silence." Her words stayed in my mind. That evening, I looked at Scott. He was watching a game. I said, "Can we talk?" He said, "Later." I said, "No, now." He paused the video. He looked at me. "What's wrong now?" he asked. I took a breath. "I feel like I'm not here," I said. "You don't see me. You don't hear me." He said, "You always want something." I said, "No, I just want to feel like I matter." He laughed. "Is this about the pasta again?" I stood up. "This is about everything." He looked confused. "Why are you so dramatic?" I didn't answer. I walked to the other room. I closed the door. That night, I slept on the sofa. The next morning, Scott said nothing. He left the house. He didn't say goodbye. I sat at the table. I looked at the wall. I thought, why did I marry again? Why did I hope again? I called Rachel. I said, "Can I come over?" She said yes. We sat in her kitchen. She gave me warm tea. She said, "You're tired." I said, "Yes." She said, "You're allowed to want more." I cried for the first time in months. She didn't try to stop me. She just sat beside me. I went home that evening. The house was dark again. Scott was on his laptop. I didn't say anything. I went to bed early. The next day, I woke up and started packing a small bag. Just a few clothes, my ID, my phone, my charger. That's all. Scott saw the bag. "What are you doing?" he asked. Said, "I'm leaving." He said, "Where will you go?" I said, "Somewhere I feel seen." He laughed. "This is crazy." I didn't answer. He said, "You'll come back." I said, "I don't think so." I closed the door behind me. I didn't go far. I stayed with Rachel for the first few days. Her home was small, but warm. She gave me space. She didn't ask too many questions. I was thankful for that. The first morning, I woke up and didn't hear a screen. I didn't hear keys clicking. I didn't smell burnt toast or cold silence. I heard birds. I heard her old kettle on the stove. I felt calm. It had been so long since I felt calm. I sat at her table and drank tea. She spoke about the park, about the news, about the little things in life. I listened. I nodded. But my mind was still heavy. It was not easy to walk away. It was harder to stay. Rachel gave me a clean blanket, a drawer, and a quiet corner to think. In those days, I didn't do much. I helped her with simple tasks. I swept the floor. I watered her plants. I went to the market. I cooked lunch. It was simple, but it gave my hands something to do. My heart was still slow. My thoughts were full of questions. I didn't know what to call this feeling. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was just empty. Like I had used all my energy in two homes that never gave me rest. I didn't hear from Scott. Not the first day. Not the second. On the third day, he sent a short message. "Let me know when you're done." I didn't answer. I read the message and then put the phone down. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just felt tired. That week, I walked every morning. The air was cold. My hands were dry. I looked at the sky, the streets, the trees. I watched people walk their dogs, carry their bags, push baby strollers. Life didn't stop. It kept going. And so did I. One afternoon, I saw a couple sitting on a bench. They were not holding hands. They were just talking. But their faces were soft. Their words looked gentle. I didn't want what they had. I just wanted peace. I wanted a life where I could speak and be heard, sit and be seen. I began to think about my past, about how quickly I said yes the first time, how fast I said yes the second time. Both times I had hope, but hope was not enough. I gave love, but I did not ask for care. I stayed too long. I tried too hard. I lost myself trying to keep others happy. Rachel noticed I was quiet. She didn't try to cheer me up. She gave me books. She gave me time, and I needed that more than words. One day, I walked past a small library. I went inside and looked at the shelves. I didn't take anything. I just stood there. I liked the quiet. I liked the smell of old pages. I felt safe. Later that evening, I told Rachel, "I think I want to live alone." She smiled and said, "That sounds like a good idea." I found a small room 2 streets away. It was part of an old house. The walls were white. The floor was clean. The window was big. The rent was low. I said yes. Moving day was quiet. Rachel helped me carry 2 bags. That was all I had. I didn't need more. I put my clothes in the drawer. I placed one photo by the window. A photo of me as a child standing in the sun. That first night alone, I didn't feel scared. I made tea. I read a book. I looked at the sky. I felt something inside me begin to breathe again. The days passed. I made new habits. I went to the market early. I cooked small meals. I cleaned on Fridays. I washed my clothes on Sundays. I made my bed each morning. Life was simple, but it was mine. One morning, I saw a woman near the bus stop. She looked lost. I helped her find the right bus. She said thank you with a smile. That smile stayed with me all day. It reminded me that I still had something to give, even in small ways. I didn't miss the noise. I didn't miss the screen light. I didn't miss the cold meals or the quiet rooms full of distance. I missed the idea of love, but not the way I had lived it. Sometimes I asked myself, will I ever try again? But I didn't rush to answer. I didn't need to. Right now, I was learning how to be still, how to be alone without feeling lonely. I made a rule for myself: no fast choices. No more yes just because someone smiled. No more walking into homes where I had to shrink to fit. No more giving everything and asking for nothing. Rachel still visited. She brought fruit, flowers, small things that made me smile. She said I looked stronger. I didn't know if I was, but I felt lighter, and that was enough. I began to write down my expenses. I started saving little by little. I didn't have big dreams. I didn't need them. I just wanted to live well, eat warm food, and sleep without worry. One evening, I stood by my window. The sky was soft. The street was quiet. I looked at the photo by the sill. That little girl in the sun. She didn't know about 2 rings, 2 names, 2 homes. She just smiled at the light. I smiled back at her. I didn't win. I didn't get a happy ending, but I got my voice back. I got my time back. And maybe that's more than peace. Maybe that's freedom. If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.